Alan led the Vortian delegation up the walkway to his home. It was a simple 2-story building with a well-kept garden. As they approached the front door, it opened to reveal a human female with short blonde hair and a warm smile. "Welcome," she said. "I'm Nancy Wright, Alan's wife. Please come in." The Vortians ducked slightly to enter the doorway, their tall frames requiring careful movement in the human-sized home. Inside, the house was comfortably furnished with soft seating, wooden tables, and various decorative items. Ambassador Krasdir was about to speak when something small and furry leaped onto a nearby table. The Vortian security team reacted instantly, hands moving to weapons before they could process what they were seeing. "That's just Max," Nancy said quickly, noticing their reaction. "One of our cats." The creature in question was small, covered in orange fur, with pointed ears and bright green eyes. It sat on the table, tail swishing slowly as it examined the visitors. "A predator," Vexcor stated, not relaxing his posture. "In your dwelling?" "Yes," Alan confirmed. "Cats are predators. Excellent hunters. They've lived alongside humans for thousands of years." As if to prove the point, a second cat, this one black and white, wandered into the room. Without hesitation, it approached Nancy and rubbed against her legs. She bent down and lifted the small creature, which immediately began making a rumbling sound as she stroked its fur. "This is Pepper," Nancy introduced the cat as casually as if she were introducing another person. "She's very friendly." Security Chief Vexcor watched in amazement as the small predator, clearly equipped with sharp claws and teeth, settled contentedly in Nancy's arms, purring as she scratched behind. "Its ears." "The noise it makes," Scarvin asked cautiously. "Is it a warning?" Nancy smiled. "No, it's called purring. It means she's happy and comfortable." A sudden barking sound from another room caused the Vortians to tense again. A moment later, a large brown and black dog bounded into the room, tail wagging excitedly. "And this is Bruno, our German shepherd," Alan said, kneeling to greet the animal. The dog licked his face enthusiastically before turning curious eyes to the visitors. "Your home contains multiple predator species," Krasde observed, his voice carefully neutral. "You live with them, sleep near them." "They're family," Nancy said simply, still holding the cat. Alan stood up, patting the dog's head. "Humans have lived alongside domesticated animals for most of our history. Dogs were probably the first. They helped us hunt, guarded our settlements, warned us of danger. Cats kept vermin away from our food stores. It was a partnership that benefited both species." Ambassador Krasather watched as the dog moved cautiously toward him, sniffing the air. After a moment's consideration, Bruno sat down at a respectful distance, watching the aliens with alert but non-threatening interest. "He's assessing you," Alan explained. "Dogs are excellent judges of character and intention. They can smell fear, aggression, even illness. We relied on those abilities throughout our development." The ambassador slowly extended his scaled hand toward the dog. Bruno sniffed it carefully, then, apparently deciding the alien posed no threat, allowed Krasder to touch his head. "Remarkable," the ambassador said quietly, feeling the soft fur under his clawed fingers. "On our world, such an interaction would be impossible. All life evolved to compete. Alliance between species never occurred." Later that day, Alan took the delegation to a nearby ranch. Here, they watched humans on horseback working with trained dogs to herd cattle across open fields. The Vortians observed in fascinated silence as predator and prey species worked together under human direction. "We didn't just survive our world's predators," Olivia explained as they watched. "We formed alliances with some, domesticated others, and learned to coexist with most. The predators that might have hunted us became our protectors instead. and those you couldn't ally with. Vexcor asked. We avoided them when possible. Alan said, when necessary, we developed tools and strategies to defend ourselves. But even then, our goal wasn't usually extermination, just establishing boundaries. That evening, Alan took the delegation to a natural history museum. As they walked through exhibits showing human evolution and the development of early tools, he continued explaining. We weren't the strongest, fastest, or most naturally armed species on Earth, but we had adaptability, cooperation, and the ability to use tools. We didn't need to outfight our predators, we outsmarted them. The Vortians stopped before a diorama, showing early humans with spears, facing off against a large cat with enormous fangs. Your ancestors fought with sharpened sticks against creatures like that? Krasother seemed genuinely impressed. Sometimes, Alan acknowledged, but more importantly, we observed, learned, and adapted. We studied how predators think because we needed to think like them ourselves. They moved through the museum, following the timeline of human development. The exhibits showed how primitive tools became more sophisticated, how human settlements grew, and how relationships with domesticated animals evolved. What I don't understand, Scarvin said as they examined a display about agricultural development, is why Earth is classified as more dangerous than Vorsia Prime. Your predators, while impressive, seem less immediately lethal than those of our world. Alan exchanged a glance with Olivia. The classification isn't based solely on the native wildlife. Before he could elaborate, they reached an exhibit that caught the Vortians' attention. It showed human warfare throughout history, from ancient battles with simple weapons to modern conflicts with advanced technology. Ambassador Krasother studied the images carefully. You fought each other as well as the predators. Yes, Alan admitted. Human history includes many conflicts between our own groups. The ambassador turned to face Alan directly. Commander Wright, I believe I'm beginning to understand. Your species lacked natural weapons, so you created artificial ones. You lacked natural armor, so you built shelters and fashioned protective gear. When faced with superior predators, you turned some into allies and outsmarted the rest. That's right, Alan confirmed. But in doing so, Krasother continued, his voice thoughtful, you developed capabilities that went far beyond merely surviving your world's threats. You didn't just react to your environment, you learned to control it. They reached the final exhibit, which showed the modern world cities, transportation networks, power plants, and technological achievements. Exactly, Alan said. We survived by adapting, not by overpowering. We studied our world instead of just fighting it. And we applied what we learned to every challenge we faced. Security Chief Vexcor had been unusually quiet during their museum tour. Now he spoke, his voice low. On Vorsia, we measured strength by the ability to defeat enemies directly. We evolved natural weapons and developed technology to amplify our fighting capabilities. But we took a different path, Olivia finished for him. Neither better nor worse, just different. As they left the museum, the evening sky was filled with stars. Ambassador Krasother looked up at them, then back at Alan. Double quotes, tomorrow is our final day on Earth, he said. I would like to meet with your government representatives to discuss revising our initial diplomatic approach. I believe the Vortian Confederation and Earth may have more to offer each other than I first assumed. Alan nodded. I'll make the arrangements. As they returned to their transport, Krasother fell into step beside Alan. There's still one thing that puzzles me, Commander. What's that, Ambassador? If humans survived your world's predators, primarily through intelligence and cooperation, rather than through natural weapons or superior strength, why is Earth classified as the most dangerous death world in known space? By your own admission, your world's predators, while formidable, are not inherently more lethal than those of Vorsia Prime. Alan looked at the ambassador for a long moment before answering. I think you already know the answer to that, Ambassador. But we'll discuss it fully tomorrow. On the final day of their visit, the Vortian delegation gathered in a conference room at Earth's diplomatic headquarters in Geneva. The mood had shifted dramatically from their first meeting at Unity Station. Where there was once contempt, now there was cautious respect. Ambassador Krazather sat across from Alan Wright and a small group of human representatives. Among them was Dr. Emma Reyes, Earth's leading expert in xenobiology, who had been called in specifically for this meeting. Before we discuss revised trade agreements, Krazather began, I must acknowledge that our assessment of humanity was incomplete. We judged you by the standards of our own evolutionary path. Alan nodded. A natural assumption. Every species carries the bias of their own history. You mentioned forming alliances with other species, the ambassador continued. That concept is foreign to us. On Vorsia Prime, alliances were formed only between members of our own species. All else was prey or predator. Dr. Reyes leaned forward. Slightly. That's what makes Earth unique among known Deathworlds, Ambassador. Our ecosystem fostered complex interdependent relationships, rather than simple predator-prey dynamics. Humans learned to exploit those relationships. The ambassador considered this for a moment. And this is why you seek diplomatic relations, rather than conquest? Because your evolutionary history rewarded cooperation? Partly, Alan said. But also because we recognize strength in diversity. The same principle that led us to domesticate wolves instead of exterminating them applies to interspecies relations. We believe different evolutionary paths offer different advantages. Krazather's scaled fingers tapped lightly on the table as he thought. The predators of our world could never be tamed. Perhaps not tamed, Emma suggested, but understood, respected, and maybe even partnered with in ways you haven't explored. Your species developed incredible natural defenses and technological weapons. Ours developed empathy and adaptability. Both approaches succeeded. Security Chief Vex Kor, who had been quiet for most of the meeting, finally spoke. During our visit, we observed many examples of your species' unusual approach to survival, but something still doesn't make sense. What's that, Chief Vex Kor? Alan asked. If humans tamed their world's predators rather than destroying them, if you chose cooperation over conflict whenever possible, why is Earth classified as the most dangerous deathworld in known space? The room fell silent. The human representatives exchanged glances. Dr. Reyes was the one who finally answered. The classification system for planets isn't based solely on the native wildlife or environmental conditions. It also takes into account the dominant species and the potential threat they pose to visitors. Vex Kor's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting that humans themselves are the reason for Earth's classification? Consider what you've learned about us, Alan said quietly. We evolved on a world with predators that forced us to become something more than just another animal. We didn't develop claws or armor or venom. Instead, we developed something far more dangerous. Intelligence, Krazather said. But many species are intelligent. Not just intelligence, Olivia clarified. Problem-solving ability, creativity, pattern recognition. The capacity to observe a threat, analyze it, and develop a completely new solution. Alan nodded. We studied our predators, Ambassador. We didn't just fight them. We learned from them. We adopted their hunting techniques, improved upon them, and applied them with human intelligence and tool use. Understanding began to dawn in the ambassador's eyes. When early humans wanted to run faster, we didn't evolve stronger legs. We domesticated horses, Dr. Reyes explained. When we wanted to see in the dark, we didn't evolve night vision. We tamed wolves with their superior senses to watch for us. When we needed to travel across water, We didn't evolve gills, we built boats. We became the ultimate adapters. Alan continued. And we applied that same approach to every challenge, including warfare. He touched a control, and a holographic display activated in the center of the table. It showed images from human history, the development of increasingly sophisticated weapons, defensive systems, and military strategies. For most of our history, our greatest predators were other humans, Alan said. We competed for resources, territory, and power. We turned the skills we developed for survival against each other. The images shifted to show modern weapon systems, orbital platforms, and defense grids. Earth isn't classified as a Class 12 death world because of our wildlife, Alan said, his voice somber. It's classified that way because of us. Ambassador. Krazither studied the images carefully. You turned the survival imperative into technological advancement. Yes, Emma confirmed. But we also turned our capacity for cooperation into civilization. The same adaptability that made us dangerous predators also gave us art, music, medicine, and exploration. The holographic display changed again, now showing images of human achievements, architectural wonders, scientific breakthroughs, artistic masterpieces, and scenes of cooperation across cultures. This is what makes humans truly unique, Alan explained. Not that we survived our world's predators, but what we became in the process. Krazither sat back, his posture reflecting deep thought. On Vorsia, we measure strength by one's ability to destroy threats. We evolved natural weapons and built our society around enhancing those capabilities. It never occurred to us that another path could lead to equal or greater power. Different paths, different strengths, Alan said simply. After a long moment, the ambassador extended his clawed hand across the table in the human gesture he had observed. The Vortian Confederation would be interested in revising our initial trade proposal, Commander Wright. We believe there may be much our peoples could learn from each other. Alan took the ambassador's hand. Earth would welcome such an arrangement. As the meeting concluded and formal documents were prepared, Krazither pulled Alan aside. There is one question that still troubles me, the ambassador said. If humans are as dangerous as Earth's classification suggests, why invite us here? Why reveal your nature so openly? Alan smiled. Because we've learned that the most successful survival strategy isn't intimidation or isolation, it's building connections. The galaxy is vast and likely contains threats neither of our species has encountered yet. We're stronger together than apart. Krazither considered this. On Vorsia, showing weakness is inviting attack. Your approach is counterintuitive to you. But you understand it now, don't you? Alan asked. You survived your Deathworld predators through strength and technology. We survived ours by understanding them, learning from them, and ultimately forming alliances with them. The ambassador's scales shifted in what Alan now recognized as the Vortian expression of agreement. You survived your Deathworld predators, he said, but as I've now learned ... you tend yours. And in the process, Alan added quietly, we became something else entirely. As the Vortian delegation prepared to depart Earth the next day, Security Chief Vexcor approached Olivia with an unusual request. Lieutenant Martinez, he said somewhat awkwardly, I would like to pet the dog again before we leave. Olivia smiled. Bruno would like that too. I think he's grown quite fond of you. Watching his security chief cautiously stroking the German shepherd, Ambassador Krazither turned to Alan. I came to Earth expecting to find a weak species asking for protection, he admitted. Instead, I found the most dangerous predators in the galaxy who choose to use their power to build rather than destroy. That is a lesson the Vortian Confederation would do well to learn. Alan nodded. The first of many exchanges between our worlds, I hope. As their shuttle lifted off from Earth the following morning, the Vortians looked down at the blue planet below them, with new eyes, seeing not just another world, but a different path to survival that none of them had imagined possible. The giant alien ships appeared in Earth's sky without warning on a clear Tuesday morning in July 2147. They hung above major cities like dark clouds, blocking the sun in some places. People stopped and stared up at them. Some ran in fear. Others took pictures. No one knew what to do. In Washington, D.C., Commander John Miller of the Earth Defense Force got the call at 6:15 a.m. He was in the shower when his communication device buzzed loudly on the bathroom counter. He stepped out, water dripping on the floor, and answered it. "Commander Miller? This is Central Command. We need you here now. They've come." John didn't need to ask who they were. Humanity had been watching the stars for signs of alien life for centuries. Now they were here. 30 minutes later, John sat in the main war room of Earth Defense Headquarters with 20 other military and government officials. The room was silent as they watched the screens showing the massive ships. 7 ships total, said General Frank Ward, pointing at the display. 1 over each continent. The biggest one is directly above us. President Olivia Davis spoke next. Her voice was calm, but John noticed her hands shaking slightly. They've sent a message. They want to meet with our representatives. It could be a trap, said Lieutenant Susan Wright, a tough woman with short blonde hair who worked directly under John. Susan never trusted anything at face value. John appreciated that about her. It could be, John agreed. But we need to know why they're here. President Davis nodded. That's why I'm sending you, Commander Miller. You'll lead our first contact team. John felt his mouth go dry. Me? You've trained for this, the president said. Your background in both military strategy and diplomatic relations makes you our best choice. 2 hours later, John stood with Susan and 3 other team members on the roof of the defense headquarters. They watched as a small craft left the massive alien ship above and descended toward them. It made no sound as it landed on the helicopter pad. Stay alert, John whispered to his team. But remember, we're here to talk, not fight. The door of the alien craft opened. A ramp extended to the ground. John took a deep breath and stepped forward as the aliens emerged. They were tall, about 7 feet, with blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. They had 4 arms and walked on 2 legs. Their faces had 3 large eyes in a triangle pattern and a small mouth with no visible nose. One alien stepped ahead of the others. It wore a complex outfit with many symbols. On it, John guessed this was their leader. I am Supreme Conqueror Vexter of the Zordaxian Alliance, the alien said in perfect English. Its voice had an odd echo to it. Who speaks for Earth? John stepped forward. I am Commander John Miller of the Earth Defense Force. I represent the United Earth Council. Vexter looked down at John. The alien's 3 eyes blinked at different times. You are smaller than I expected. John heard Susan shift behind him. He knew she didn't like the alien's tone. We've come to invite your representatives to proper talks, Vexter continued. On our command ship. John considered this. Going onto their ship would be risky, but they needed information. We accept your invitation. My team and I will come. With you. The inside of the alien ship was vast and cold. The walls glowed with a soft blue light. John and his team followed Vexter down long hallways until they reached a large room with a round table in the center. Other aliens waited there. They looked different from Vexter. Some had scales, others had fur. John realized they were looking at several different alien species. The Zordaxian Alliance consists of 7 species, Vexter explained, noticing John's surprise. We have conquered and colonized over 300 planets across the galaxy. Susan stepped closer to John. "Did you say conquered?" she asked. Vexter made a sound like rocks falling. John realized it was laughter. Of course, the strong rule, the weak serve. That is the way of the universe. The aliens sat at the table. John and his team took seats across from them. The chairs were too big, making John feel like a child at the adults' table. "Earth is what we classify as a death world," said another alien with green scales. "A planet with hostile conditions and dangerous life forms." "Hostile?" John asked, confused. "Earth is perfect for human life." This made all the aliens laugh. Vexter's 3 eyes narrowed with amusement. "Perfect for you because you evolved there. To advanced species like ours, your world is harsh and unpleasant. Your gravity is too strong. Your oxygen levels too high. Your temperature variations too extreme. Yet you boast about conquering death worlds," Susan said. "We have conquered many worlds far more dangerous than Earth," Vexter said proudly. "Planets with acid rain and toxic air. Worlds with predators that would make your Earth lions look like pets." John leaned forward. "Then why come to Earth now?" Vexter placed all 4 hands on the table. "We have been watching your planet for some time. You humans are interesting. Physically weak compared to most species we've encountered, yet you've survived through intelligence and tool use." "We've done more than survive," John said. "We've thrived." "On one small planet," Vexter said dismissively. "We offer you a choice, humans. Become a protected world under our alliance, or face evaluation." "Evaluation?" John asked. The scaled alien spoke again. "A process where we test a species' worth through combat and survival trials. Many fail and are enslaved. Some prove worthy and join us as equals." John felt a chill run down his spine. "We came here to establish peaceful relations, not to submit to anyone." Vexter stood up, towering over the humans. "You misunderstand, Commander Miller. This is not a negotiation. It is an opportunity. Your people are primitive compared to U.S. Your weapons would not harm our ships. We could take your world by force." "Then why don't you?" Susan challenged. "Because mindless conquest is boring," Vexter said. "We prefer to give species a chance to prove themselves." John stood up too, though he only reached the alien's chest. "We need time to discuss this with our leaders." "Very well," Vexter said. "You have 30 of your Earth days to decide. Submit willingly and enjoy the protection and technology of the Alliance, or face evaluation. Choose wisely, humans." As they were escorted back to the small craft that would return them to Earth, Susan whispered to John, "They're just bullies with fancy ships." John nodded slightly. "Bullies who've apparently conquered hundreds of worlds." "They keep talking about how dangerous Earth is," Susan said. "Maybe that's something we can use." John looked back at the aliens with their strange bodies and arrogant manner. "They think they know everything about death worlds," he said quietly. "But they've never faced humans on our home turf." The small craft dropped them back on the roof of the defense headquarters. As it flew away, John watched it return to the massive ship above. "What do we do now?" asked one of the team members. John's face was serious as he turned to them. "Now we prepare. The aliens have given us 30 days, and we're going to use every minute of it." The United Earth Council meeting room was packed full. Leaders from every nation sat around the large oval table, their faces showing worry and fear. Commander John Miller stood at the front of the room, finishing his report about the meeting. "With the aliens. They've given us 30 days to decide," John said. "Either we submit to becoming their protectorate, or we face what they call evaluation." President Olivia Davis stood up. She was a tall woman with dark skin and gray hair cut short. Her voice was strong as she addressed the room. "What exactly is this evaluation?" "Combat trials," John explained. They test a species to see if they're worthy of respect. The room erupted in loud voices. Some leaders wanted to fight. Others wanted to submit. The noise grew until President Davis raised her hand for silence. "We need more information before we decide," she said. "Commander Miller, what do we know about these aliens?" John pressed a button, and images of the alien ships appeared on the wall screen. They call themselves the Zordaxian Alliance, 7 different alien species working together. They've conquered over 300 planets. Their technology is far beyond ours, added Lieutenant Susan Wright, standing next to John. Their ships could destroy our cities in minutes. A man raised his hand. He was the leader of Japan. Then we have no choice but to submit. Susan shook her head. I'm not so sure. They kept calling Earth a death world. They seem to think our planet is extremely dangerous. Dr. Peterson might be able to help us understand more, John suggested. He's been studying the data we collected. On their ship, Dr. Alan Peterson was called into the meeting. He was a thin man with wild gray hair and glasses. He carried a tablet computer and looked excited. I've been analyzing the environmental readings from their ship, Dr. Peterson said. It's fascinating. Their air had less oxygen than ours. The gravity was lighter. The temperature was perfectly stable. What does that tell us? President Davis asked. It suggests they evolved on planets with very stable, controlled environments, Dr. Peterson explained. They find Earth's conditions harsh because our planet has such variety. Our gravity, oxygen levels, temperature changes, things we consider normal, might be extreme to them. Susan leaned forward. They boasted about conquering death worlds, but do they actually live on them? Or do they change them first? Dr. Peterson nodded eagerly. That's the key question. From what I've found, they terraform planets before they occupy them. They make every world like their home worlds. The room went quiet as people thought about this. John broke the silence. So they conquer worlds, but they don't adapt to them. They make the worlds adapt to them. Exactly, Dr. Peterson said. Humans, on the other hand, have adapted to live in almost every environment on Earth deserts, jungles, Arctic regions, high mountains. President Davis looked thoughtful. Could this be an advantage for us? I think so, John said. What if we accept their challenge, but change the rules? What if we propose survival challenges on natural worlds, without technology? Just basic survival skills? Susan smiled for the first time since meeting the aliens. We could select people who've spent their lives in extreme environments, people who know how to adapt and survive. The aliens might refuse, someone pointed out. They might, John agreed, but they're so confident, so arrogant. They believe they're superior to us in every way. They might accept just to prove us wrong. President Davis took a deep breath. It's risky, but it might be our best chance. Commander Miller, Lieutenant Wright, start putting together a team of Earth's best survivors. Dr. Peterson, learn everything you can about the aliens' biology and limitations. Over the next 2 weeks, Susan traveled around the world, meeting with people who had survived in the most extreme places on Earth. Her list of candidates grew. She found Sam Carter at an underwater research station near Australia. Sam had lived underwater longer than any other human, studying deep-sea creatures. He had survived 3 different emergencies when the station lost power or flooded. In Mexico. Susan met Maria Gonzalez, a volcanologist who studied active volcanoes. Maria had once been trapped for 3 days near an erupting volcano and had survived by finding shelter in a cave and collecting water from plants. Kyle Barnes was harder to find. The Arctic survival expert lived in a remote cabin in Alaska. He had once survived for a month alone when a storm separated him from his research team. He made tools from bones and ice and hunted for food in the freezing cold, Diane Foster was leading a research team in the Sahara Desert when Susan found her. Diane knew how to find water in seemingly dry places and how to stay cool in extreme heat. She had saved her entire team when they got lost in a sandstorm 2 years ago. The last member of the team was Paul Jackson, a former astronaut who had spent more time in zero gravity than any other human. He understood how different gravity affected the human body and how to adapt to it. When they all gathered at the Earth Defense Headquarters, John explained the plan to them. "We're going to challenge the aliens to survival contests on untamed planets," he said. "No advanced technology, just basic survival gear. Each of you will face one of their warriors in an environment similar to what you've mastered on Earth." "Why would they agree to that?" Sam asked. He was a big man with a deep voice. "Because they're proud," Susan answered. "They've built their whole identity around being the ultimate conquerors of harsh worlds. And they underestimate humans," John added. "They see us as weak because we're not as strong or as big as they are." Maria smiled. "They have no idea what humans can do when challenged." The next day, John and Susan returned to the alien ship to present their proposal to Vexter. The Supreme Conqueror listened, all three of his eyes blinking at different times. "You wish to change the terms of evaluation?" Vexter asked, sounding amused. "You think you can survive better than us on wild worlds?" "We do," John said confidently. 5 challenges on 5 different planets. Basic survival gear only. No weapons. No advanced technology. Just your best against our best. Vexter made that strange falling rocks laugh again. "You surprise me, humans. I expected you to beg for mercy, not challenge us directly. Is that a yes?" Susan asked. Vexter looked at the other aliens in the room. They all seemed entertained by the humans' boldness. "Very well. We accept your challenge. 5 planets, 5 challenges. If you win the majority, we will recognize Earth as an equal and offer alliance instead of protection. If you lose, you submit to us completely." "Deal," John said, extending his hand. Vexter looked confused by the gesture for a moment, then reached out one of his 4 hands and shook John's dot as they left the alien ship. Susan whispered to John. "They took the bait," John nodded. "Now we have to hope our people are as good as we think they are. The real challenge is about to begin." The small transport ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Kelthos 9. Maria Gonzalez gripped her seat tightly and tried to stay calm. Through the window, she saw a world of fire and smoke. Red-hot lava flowed across the dark surface. Thick clouds of ash filled the sky. This was the first challenge planet. "We will land near the base of the largest volcano," said the alien pilot. "The challenge is simple. You and Kavral must survive for 3 Earth days and reach the pickup point 50 kilometers north." Maria nodded. She had prepared for this. The heat, the toxic gases, the dangerous terrain. It was similar to the active volcanoes she had studied on Earth, just more extreme. Kavral was waiting when Maria exited the ship. He was from one of the reptilian species in the Zergaxian Alliance. His body was covered in thick scales, and he stood nearly 8 feet tall. He looked down at Maria with what seemed like amusement. "This human female is my opponent?" Kavral asked the pilot. "She will not survive the first night." Maria said nothing. She checked her basic survival pack. Water purifier, heat-resistant blanket, simple tools, breathing mask. The rules allowed only basic equipment that both species had agreed upon. "The challenge begins now," the pilot announced before returning to the ship. "Good luck to both competitors." As the ship lifted off, Maria immediately studied her surroundings. The air was hot and filled with sulfur. In the distance, the volcano rumbled. She pulled up her breathing mask to filter out the worst of the gases. "Where will you go, human?" Kavral asked. His voice was deep and raspy. "Away from the volcano," Maria replied simply. "It's going to erupt soon." Kavral laughed. "You cannot know that." "I've studied volcanoes all my life," Maria said. "The signs are clear. We should move north now." Kavral ignored her warning. "I do not take advice from primitive species. My scales will protect me from the heat. I will rest here before traveling." Maria shrugged. "Your choice." She began walking north, carefully testing the ground before each step. Some areas looked solid, but were thin crusts over molten lava. After she had traveled about 5 kilometers, the ground shook violently. Maria turned to see the volcano erupting, just as she had predicted. Huge clouds of ash shot into the sky. Rivers of lava poured down the slopes. Maria quickened her pace. She needed to find shelter before the ash cloud reached her. She spotted a formation of large rocks and headed toward it. The rocks would shield her from the worst of the ashfall. As she set up her small camp, Maria wondered how Kavral was doing. Despite his arrogance, she didn't want him to die. This was a survival challenge, not a fight to the death. The night on Kelthos 9 was as bright as day because of the flowing lava. Maria found a small cave in the rock formation and used her heat-resistant blanket to make it comfortable. She used her tools to collect sulfur and other minerals. She knew how to purify water from volcanic steam, a technique she had developed on Earth. By morning, the ash had covered everything in a thick gray layer. Maria carefully continued north. The terrain was challenging, but she moved confidently. She had navigated similar conditions before. Around midday, she spotted a figure stumbling in the distance. It was Kavral, but he wasn't moving well. His scales were covered in ash, and he seemed to be having trouble breathing. Maria approached him cautiously. "Are you okay?" Kavral tried to stand taller, but swayed on his feet. "The air. It burns my lungs." Maria could see he was in trouble. His species might be heat-resistant, but they weren't adapted to the toxic volcanic gases. Without hesitation, she offered him her spare breathing mask. "Why would you help me?" Kavral asked, confused. "We are competitors. On Earth, we don't leave people to die if we can help them," Maria explained. "Even competitors." Kavral reluctantly took the mask. His breathing improved almost immediately. "The volcano will erupt again soon," Maria said. "We should keep moving north." This time, Kavral didn't argue. They traveled together, with Maria showing him how to test the ground and which routes were safer. When they stopped to rest, she demonstrated how to collect water from volcanic steam. "How do you know these things?" Kavral asked. "Experience," Maria replied. "Humans have learned to survive in many different environments on our planet. We adapt. The Alliance conquers environments," Kavral said. "We change planets to suit us. We never change ourselves." "That's the difference, then," Maria said. On the second night, another eruption separated them. A new lava flow cut across their path, trapping Kavral on the wrong side. Maria could have continued toward the pickup point, gaining an advantage. Instead, she spent hours finding a safe way around the lava flow to reach VRL. When she found him, he was trapped against a cliff with lava slowly advancing toward him. Maria used her tools and knowledge to create a path across the cooling edge of the lava flow. She called out instructions, helping Kavral escape. "You came back from me," Kavral said, sounding surprised. "Of course," Maria replied. "That's what humans do." By the third day, they had developed an unusual partnership. Kavral was physically stronger and could help clear paths. Maria had the knowledge to navigate the volcanic environment. Together, they reached the pickup point just as the transport ship arrived. On the ship, Vexter was waiting for them. The Supreme Conqueror looked at Maria with all three eyes narrowed. Our observers report that you helped Kavral multiple times. Yes, Maria admitted. Why? You could have won easily if you had left him behind. Winning wasn't as important as both. Of us surviving, Maria said. Kavral stepped forward. Supreme Conqueror, I must report that the humans showed superior adaptation to the environment. Without her help, I would have died. She understood the volcano in ways our science had not prepared me for. Vexter seemed disturbed by this report. What about the Ice World Challenge? Surely Shrix has succeeded there. An alien communications officer approached and whispered something to Vexter. The Supreme Conqueror's face showed shock. Impossible, Vexter said. Show me the video. Feed. On a screen, they could see Kyle Barnes, the Arctic survival expert, sharing his shelter with Shrix, an insectoid alien. Kyle was teaching the alien how to build protection from the bitter cold of tundras. The temperature display showed minus 70 degrees Celsius. 2 challenges, Vexter muttered. 2 humans showing unexpected skills. Maria smiled slightly. She was tired and dirty from 3 days on the volcano planet, but she felt proud. The aliens were beginning to understand what humans could do. We have 3 more challenges to go. She reminded Vexter, I think you might be surprised by what humans can accomplish. Vexter turned all 3 eyes toward her. Perhaps, he admitted, we have underestimated your species.